Hi ladies and gents, boys and girls, this is Mark from SeaWorld Earth and welcome to yet another instalment from here in Okinawa, Japan. Now today I'm going to be talking about taking my camera into a situation where I used to go pretty much every day. Now with all of the content that you know from this channel, pretty much been spent most of the time taking photographs of the ocean, and now we're going to start looking at taking photographs from within the ocean. But the product that I'm going to talk about today, it's not a sponsored product, it's not a sponsored video at all in any way, shape or form, but it is a product that is new in my arsenal of equipment, and so I want to bring it to your attention. And what am I talking about? Camera condoms. Today we're going to be talking about taking cameras, DSLRs, into the ocean using the Outex system. Okay, so what is Outex? Well, Outex basically is this. It's this very pliable, gummy looking, almost kind of opaque looking rubber bag that is used to protect a camera if it is taken into like water environments. It can also be used in dusty environments, sandy environments, something just to protect your camera from the environment, from things that cameras don't like, so sand, snow, rain, and the ocean. So it's more like a protective cover for that. For surf photography, maybe not so much. Smaller waves, possibly, but when it starts hoofing, now some of you may or may not remember, I might have mentioned in the past when I used to live in Bali before we lived in Japan. Surf photography is something that I done in order as a way to keep fit, and I done it for about a couple of years, but it was after having a child and then a couple of very near-death experiences that I kind of like put that on the top shelf and thought, yep, okay, that's for the young pups. But Okinawa's got some waves and I'm seriously thinking about maybe getting back into that, but that's all down the line. But today what I'm going to be talking about is this Outex system, how it fits onto cameras, and the kind of results that you can expect to get. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so rather than going to the expense of having a pretty expensive surf housing and associated ports, which can go from anywhere from 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, depending on however much money you want to spend. This option is a relatively economic solution to taking your camera or protecting your camera in extreme environments. I believe the bag is about 350 bucks, and then there's other bits and pieces that you buy just to build it out. And what we're going to do today, I've got my my Canon EOS 5 DSR, and I've got that fitted with a 24-105 f4, which is something that I may use for portraiture or just split shots for with the Outex system, taking it into the water. So without further ado, let's see how all of this fits together. Okay, now in order to obviously be able to see through the front of the camera, we need to have some kind of port system that allows us to take photographs. And what we have here, okay, we've got a few things. Okay, these are backwards and forwards ports, or rear and forward ports. We've got a whole bunch of clamps and stuff here, which I'll go through one by one in a short moment. And then also we have a dome port. Okay, all well and good. So how do we get going with this thing? So first off, we have the dome port, or sorry, the plastic bag, or the plastic bag, the Outex bag. What the manufacturers suggest is that you dress the camera with the ports before you apply the bag, just as a way to make things simpler. So I've tried this system a couple of times now. I've taken it into the ocean a couple of times just to test it out, and I found the way that I prefer to do it is slightly different. So even without anything on the camera, first thing off, we're going to take off the eyepiece from the back. Okay, and using a very hard surface, I'm using my desk with a little pad on there. Okay, you can see really there is form to this rubber bag, and it's got the top form here for the what is the flash element or what would be the built-in flash on a lower SLR on the top there. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to gather the whole rubber. I'm going to fit it over the lens so that the lens is all, before we've got any elements on the front end of the camera. Okay, and now it's up to me. I need to decide what it is that I'm going to shoot. If I'm going to be shooting more kind of like distant action, then I don't really want to have what is called a dome port. I don't want to have a big domed front. If I'm going to be zooming through and using the zoom on the camera, it's much better for me if I use what is called a flat port, and that is a flat element of glass fitted to the front of the housing, so that I can then just zoom through and not have to worry about water levels and stuff like that. If I'm just away from the main wave, zoomed in, taking pictures of people that way, if I want to do that, then all well and good. So what I would normally do, I would just have a flat port on the front in that scenario, and all that does is that screws into the filter thread of the lens. Okay, now on all of these ports, you have a couple of rings that come off. Okay, first off, you have one that just has like an L receding element inside there, and then you also have this other threaded screw, which is more just like a threaded ring, sorry, which is more just like a locking ring. Okay, now more about that in a moment. What you'll notice on the edge of the Outex bag is that you do have a kind of like a lip, or like a beaded, almost like an O-ring built in onto the edge of the bag, and all that does is you will have like a ledge that goes around the outside of each of the ports. Okay, if I can bring that a little bit closer, I'll be doing some cutaway images anyway and showing you the close-ups, but all you need to do is make sure that that is sitting on the back end of the ledge that sits at the base of the port that I've just screwed into my main lens. Okay, and then all I do is I'll take the lens, or the ring that has got the kind of like the L shape on the inside, and that fits over what would be that O-ring element of the housing, all right, of the bag. And then with the locking down nut, all I then do is just put that over the edge. Okay, make sure it screws in, and then by holding the ring as opposed to not, because if I didn't, all I'm going to be doing is screwing into the lens, and I don't want to do that, because if I don't tighten it enough, it's going to be loose and allow water in. So I find the best thing to do is to hold the actual ring through the rubber, okay, and then just screw that down like that. Okay, now you don't have to go crazy with this, because once it's there you go, nice and tight, that's going to be fine. That is now applying universal pressure all along the rubber with that locking nut on the inside, and that's then creating a nice seal, so no water's going to get in. Okay, now that we're done, okay, all I need to do is look at preparing the back end of the housing. Okay, so what I do, I normally just stand the camera like that, you're not going to damage it, and then just pull up the bag, okay, until it's up into this kind of area here. Now this is one area that you need to be careful of, all right, because there are some elements on the camera that can be deemed as quite sharp. So things like this, where you put your neck strap, okay, this one here sticking out here, be careful of that one. There is another one here, but that's protected by the hand guard of the camera, but also this top part here, which is the area where you fit an external flash. What I've done on both occasions is I'll just get a little bit of tape, trusted tape, photographer's best friend, put that over there. Okay, it might leave a little bit of residue, but you just wipe it off afterwards, just to dull down that strong edge. Same one here. Okay, just to dull that down so that it doesn't cause any issue with the housing. And then all I'm going to do, it is quite pliable, so don't be scared to pull it into place. Pull that back over the whole of the camera. And there we go. So that's that part now into place. Okay, so on the back of the housing, exactly the same. Okay, just wipe my LCD screen. Okay, we've got this rear mirror, and what you'll notice is you've got a little fitting here that fits into the eyepiece of the camera, which is why we removed the eyepiece to begin with. Okay, all that does then is that slots down. There we go, into the eyepiece. Come on, young lady. Here we go. There we go. Boom, and then that sits over the back of the LCD, and it gives you access to view different elements of your back screen. Now, much like the front port and any of the port systems, you have that 2-ring system here for sealing the Outex bag. Okay, you've got the L shaped ring that seals down over the O-ring, and then the little tightening ring again. And then it's exactly the same as how you've done with the front port. Okay, we just bring the Outex bag up and just sit it over the flange of this rear plate, the O-ring element of the bag. Sit it over the plate. And then eventually, when that is all done, we will then just pull the O-ring into place. Okay, so now that it's all there, we just then pull back the O-ring, okay, until it's sitting nice and snugly just on the ledge of the flange of the port. Okay. And once that's done, once that's set, all we then do is we'll put the L bracket again over that O-ring, so that sits nicely like that. Okay, and then with the tightening ring, exactly the same as for the port. Okay, that then just fits snugly onto there and starts to screw down. There we go. And exactly the same on the tightening is I will hold the port from the inside or through the housing and then just tighten it that way. Okay, now one thing that you'll notice, depending on because they do have different options for these back windows, you can have one that fits into the tripod mount of the camera, okay, and it holds it rigid on the back, or with this one with the eyepiece that actually swivels a little bit. There's a little bit of play there, because the way that you operate this housing is you need to know your camera, because all you can do then is you can pull it around and you can set focus, you can see the buttons through the bag, so that you can set them however you want to have them, review your images if you want to, scroll through, delete. You've got full complete access to your camera. Now, as you can see, and if you can imagine being in big heavy surf with something like this, there's not a lot of protection for the camera. So if you did what they call get sucked over the falls, or if you get slammed by a wave, if this was to hit the reef, it would just be like dropping the camera on its own onto a rock. Okay, whereas with a dedicated surf housing, obviously they're made of stronger polycarbonate material, or some even aluminium, so that then is going to take the shock of the fall. So I would be very wary to take this into big surf, but that's just me. Some people have probably got more experience and more capability than me in big surf, but just from a personal point, I personally wouldn't want to risk it. But in small surf, okay, for taking images of SUPs or snorkeling or just being in a wet environment, even without even being in the ocean, if you want to go out into the rain or into a hurricane or whatever, then obviously off you go. Okay, you can take pictures that way. There is also a dome port system with this, which I'm going to go into now with a couple of wide angle lenses that I've got here, because there are different ways again to fit the dome ports to any kind of lens that you want to use. Okay, so that is basically the bag. Couple of points: when you do go into the ocean, because of the amount of air that you've got inside there, it is going to float. All right, you can buy leashes and cables and attachment cables for this system, which I strongly recommend. It doesn't take a very big wave to knock you over, and the last thing you want to do is let this thing go and then it gets taken by a wave, smashed on a rock, a reef or whatever. So have it attached to you. I just use a homemade piece of rope that I tie around it, and then I've got it like a lanyard around my waist. If it works, don't knock it. it's all good. So that is the main bag. Let's just put that to a side a minute. Okay, and now we're going to look at how we attach what is called a dome port, and I've got one of their dome ports here. This is the 120mm version. They do have a monster that is, I believe, 180mm, so it's a huge beast. But this is a glass dome port that will allow you to do a very specific kind of imaging. Let's just give it a bit of a shine there. All of the dome ports that come from Outex, they have the same locking system as we've just seen on the different ports there, okay, or on the flat port at least, and on the rear port. You have this locking ring, okay, that fits there, and then you have the L-shaped O-ring sealing ring, okay, that sits first, and then you have on all of the ports you have this flange, okay, this little ledge around the outside, and that is where the Outex bag sits when you're putting it up or when you're putting it onto the port. All right, but if we want to take a very specific kind of image, and what I mean is the split shots, you know, the split shots where you've got the water level, half the swimmer, and then the top side, so it could be used on a reef, on a beautiful coral island or whatever, just artistic. So it's down to the shooter what it is that they wish to convey. It may be a mangrove system. It might be showing mangrove roots and the trees in a mangrove system, etc., etc. So yeah, it just allows a massive amount of creativity when you want to use a dome port. But how do you attach something this big onto a lens that may be, for example, this small, or even with two different form factors as well? What you'll notice on some wide angle lenses, this is the 15mm from Lauer, the 1:1 macro, so you can do some really crazy stuff, and it'll be, I'm really looking forward to taking this underwater so I can try and do some really creepy stuff in the mangroves, but that's for another idea down the road. But as you'll notice with wide angle lenses, and this also from Lauer, this is the 12mm, and you'll notice on this extreme wide angle is the form factor on here, there's nowhere to screw a filter. Okay, whereas this one has a, what is it, a 77mm thread, same as the port system that we used, or the flat port that we've currently got on this lens here. Okay, so how will it all work? All right, quite simply, when you decide how it is that you want to dress your camera, if you want to use a flat port, then here is the flat port, and I've showed you how to fit that on. With any other port, for example, let's say the 77mm, but we want to use a dome port, then what you can get is a 77mm adapter ring, and that just then screws directly into the lens, into the filter thread of the lens, the 77, okay, and then what you've got is this here. So all you then do is you take your dome port and you screw that onto that adapter, again just hand tight, and then when you're fitting the bag you would then pull the Outex along so that outer edge, the beaded edge, that sits on the lower part of the flange that goes around the outside of the dome, and then you simply, same again, you take the L ring that goes over the Outex O-ring, and then your tightening ring, again same as normal, that then goes and tightens down in order to create that nice seal, and then you have a dome port fitted to your lens, and then the housing and the camera, everything else sealed and good to go. So then that will allow you to start taking some pretty funky and some pretty creative shots with the water halfway along the field of view. Now that is for a system that uses, or for a wide angle lens that actually does have a filter thread. But most of the super wide angle lenses, they don't have that. Okay, so you have to have a different solution to fitting that to a lens. Let's just get that one out of the way. And that is, you will have an adapter with a clamp onto it. Okay, and what you'll notice on most super wide angle lenses, they've got this sunshade flange around the outside, and all that happens is that will then sit over the lens. There is an Allen wrench that sits that you then would just simply clench up, tighten up, so that it bites onto the lens, and then exactly the same thing again. You're going to screw your dome port down onto that holder. You then, with the O-ring that's formed, place that down, and then your sealing ring is the last thing that you'll put on, so that everything can be tightened down. But there you have it. So then you've got your extreme wide angle lens clamped down onto your onto the outside of the sun shade for the lens, and then the apparatus for the dome port goes on in exactly the same way. Now, because I don't have an assistant, I don't have any way of filming me talking to you while I'm trying to film this in the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with a couple of shots that I've taken over the last few days with this system. Like I said, it is pretty new to me, so I'm still figuring it all out. What I can say when you are shooting, especially with a wide angle lens, is you've got to be really careful with the position of where you are to the sun, because you do, or you can run the risk of getting reflections back from the inside of the dome port. So again, it's all down to trial and error, perfecting the technique, and it is just a technique. So hopefully in the near future there'll be more videos coming that will show me in the water, bringing you imagery from the oceans, which is an area that I love, and I'm sure a lot of you love. And if we can start spicing up the kind of imaging that I'm bringing to you guys, then all the better. But for now, I'm going to love you and leave you. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Hit the subscriptions button just down the bottom there, and slap the old notifications bell so that you'll be updated as and when new content is available from yours truly. But until that time, all that remains is for me to wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay happy, stay sane, and above all, just go out and enjoy life. Get out, take images. You never know when the opportunity's just not going to allow you to get out. So get out and enjoy it. I'll catch up with you soon. So until then, adios, take care, all the best.